I think he likes the overall. It's the overall. Thank you. Hi, my name is Kirsten. I work with Make-A-Wish of San Diego, and I am putting together a backpacking adventure called the Trailblaze Backpacking Adventure. And it is a 3-day, 2-night excursion in our local Laguna Mountains along the PCT. And it's the very first event of its kind in Make-A-Wish Foundation history. So we are so excited for this inaugural year. And in back of me are the hikers who have pledged to raise $2,500 each, all to benefit wish granting efforts here in San Diego and Imperial Valleys counties. And we're so excited. Our event is November 3rd to the 6th. And it'll cover about 40 miles on the PCT, and we're super excited. But without further ado, I'm joined tonight by Frodo and Scout. Those are their trail names, and they're actually friends of a friend. For those of you that are familiar with Trailblaze and our spring program, there was a hike leader named Betty Wheeler, and she was always our sweep every single hike for 13 weeks, and she was gracious and made the introduction. And I'm very grateful to her, and I'm grateful to you guys for lending me your evening. So without further ado, welcome our guest speaker.
It's frickin' hot, a term of art. Is it above 90 degrees, 95? It's hot.
It is like warm.
It's a 4-liter spot.
Yes, that's why
We have a friend. His trail name is 3 Gallon. And if anyone can't hear me, rather than throwing nuts or trail mix at me, raise a hand. Y'all know what that means? Great. We have a friend who started out the Pacific Crest Trail in 2006 with 12 liters of water, 3 gallons. We still know him as 3 Gallon. That's what happens with the trail names. So first, let's start there. I'll tell you a secret. On my birth certificate, normally I'd be whispering into a knife, but I'm shouting my secret, right? On my birth certificate, it says Bernard. Mom and Dad, what were you thinking? They called me Barney, but to thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, I'm simply known as Scout. That's my trail name. I like to think I'm my best person when I'm Scout. I'm here tonight with my wife, Sandy Frodo Man. That's right. This Journeys North, my book came out in August 1st of 2020. And you've done the math in your head right now. That means we are 5 months into the pandemic. And I'm bringing out this love of my life, this book. I've given 12 book talks, a dozen in Chicago and LA and Seattle, Tacoma, San Diego. I've done TV and radio interviews, 20-minute interview on a national public radio. What would have they all been? They've all been this. Here's it here. Me and this, me and this. So I'm reading a moving story. I have to really believe, as I look at this little tiny dot with a light on it, that it's moving. I just told something really funny. You have to really, really believe. So it's really great to meet you all. Before the book came out, I had this poster made, thinking, I'll take it with me to places, right? And it'll look just like that. Isn't that cool? Tonight's the first time in the world. Right. Listen, maybe I'll have you all sign it afterwards. So, it really is good to be here. Frodo and I, we dreamed for at least 10 years of doing the Pacific Crest Trail, 2,650 miles. Actually, we went this way from Mexico to Canada. And we could do that, but your kids, the Make-A-Wish kids, our kids, they don't have the luxury of yours, do they? Yeah. And so you get to make their dreams come true in months. And when I was thinking about this earlier today, I don't know why I was reminded of Peter Pan. Remember Peter Pan? And the fairy's name is... Thank you! Oh, you guys do that. Tinkerbell is dying, and everyone has to go, I do believe in fairies. I do believe in fairies. I'm in a room of good fairies. Fairy godmothers and fairy godfathers. And it's really fun to be here with them. It's really great. I can tell why I didn't know where I was headed next, because the big word, my little outline says, badass. Did you hear that? Badass! I got an email the other day that called my wife a badass. What do you do when someone calls your spouse a badass? I wrestled in high school. I was a varsity 98-pound wrestler. So I could challenge the writer to the wrestling match, but no. They actually, I'll read you the email. There we go. Dear Barney, I guess that's not the way you start out an email where you call the person's spouse a badass, right? Dear Barney, I read your book, Journeys North, every night. I couldn't put it down. I finished it during my second bout of COVID. It was so fun. And I think she's referring to, I hope she's referring to the book and not COVID. I was on the edge of my bed reading about Ladybug and when she shattered her leg, and about Frodo when she broke her teeth. Your wife is a total badass. I love it.
So when we were hiking this past summer and we were going uphill, and I was like, oh man, this is really tough. I said, oh, but that's okay, I'm a badass.
I see her flagging a little bit. We were in Patagonia in January. And if Patagonia is on your list, do it, folks. It's wonderful. The mountains are, then again, entirely different. And I see her flagging a little bit behind me, and I go, you badass. And she'd laugh, and I'd see her start walking. So, again, I'm in a room with people who have committed to doing 15 weeks worth of training, or leading it. People who are going to do 3-day overnight, 28 miles a weekend, and people most impressively who have committed to raising $3,000 each for this wonderful cause. So I think I'm in a room full of... That's right. And let's see, what does badass look like, huh? And right this moment right this moment we pray to the PowerPoint gods, right? This was all working an hour ago. And what's next for me is a little video, and you know videos and PowerPoint. I hope I was a good boy today. Go about to see. Let's see if the speakers work, use everything. Seattle River, North Washington, the only way to get across. And I felt real stupid. I get 2/3 the way across. You know, I unbuckled my pack, so the center of gravity, and I get 2/3 the way across and think, this is really stupid. And so we told everyone else to do this little squeegee thing. And how about this one here? You see where the trail is? Yeah, that's the trail. And there's only one way to get over that western Red Cedar. Love it. And you see, she's smiling. It's okay. When was the last time that another adult read to you? It's pretty rare in our lives, isn't it? And it's actually a powerful thing. Frodo and I occasionally will have one of us a book we really like, and we'll read it to each other in bed, maybe a chapter a night. There was a trail book about a guy and a gal, and they each trade off chapters. Before the PCT, she would read the gal's woman's chapter, and I'd read man's. It was really neat. And you think to yourself, when it starts happening, you go, okay, someone's reading to me, yeah. And then there's this magical moment when you forget you're being read to. So I'm going to read a few sections tonight as we go through. We start with the introduction to Journeys North. It's a memoir, but it's not the usual trail memoir, which tends to be, I hike, and here's my hike. And there's some very good ones, like Wild, I think, did fairly well. But I did not want to write that. In fact, one of the things I really found out there was the people made so much of a difference. stories. And you're probably finding that with yourselves and your fellow hikers. Is that, yes, there's possibly a miracle happening around every bend, whether it's animal, vegetable, mineral, but the most wonderful thing out there is the people you talk to. You talk differently from each other. I tend to be, even though I'm talking a lot tonight, I tend to be a decent listener, and people would tell me their stories out there. And people would tell me their stories out there. Thank you. And I wanted to share them with you. It's a journey story, the story of 6 of us, myself, Frodo, 4 others. It still blows me away that they allowed me, they trusted me to tell their stories. Their backstories, for some of them, were harder than hiking 2,650 miles. And the book begins, the introduction begins at the end. October 2nd, 2007. October 2nd, the first week in October, you are always safe to finish on the PCT. The snows will come later. Always. October 2nd was your birthday, and that's the title. Tuesday, October 2nd, 2007. Laser couldn't feel her toes. In a pre-dawn gloom, a 25-year-old stomped a path over a foot of fresh snow. But the effort barely blunted the cold. This was the second blizzard in 3 days as the Gulf of Alaska hurled once-in-a-generation storms at Washington's Cascade Range. After 5 months hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, Laser was wearing her 5th pair of running shoes, and the studded soles were ground flat, much like her muscles, sinews, and tendons. She'd come over 2,000 miles, only 40 left to reach Canada. She had sworn to herself days before, I will crawl if I have to. Right behind her, Frodo and me, brushed fat snowflakes off our bent shoulders and packs. A dim light penetrated the pine and spruce thicket. Happy birthday, Frodo, Laser piped up. The 2 of us jerked, as if we'd been poked. In the 30 years we've been married, we had never forgotten a birthday. I never forgot, she never forgot. But this time, focused on the cold, on not getting lost, and on surviving, we both had. What do you want for your birthday? Laser asked. Frodo answered, breath visible, I want to get out of today alive. 2 more storms swept in over the next 3 days, smothering the Pacific Crest Trail in thigh-high drifts. On Thursday night, Seattle King 5 TV News reported 3 Pacific Crest Trail hikers are missing. Chatter lit up on the internet within minutes. Goodness, it's so cold now. May the Lord protect them. Past midnight, one of 60 soon-to-be rescuers wrote, I'm headed out to Stevens Pass to work the search. But they weren't searching for us. They were searching for Nadine. Oh my God. This is 3 days before that introduction. Right. Next is 2 days before the introduction. Laser's the one in red. I don't know why she's smiling. Because she has a broken zipper of her jacket and she has lost one of her gloves. Guts and Chuckwagon, 2 guys with a lot of frost on their beards. I think they're wearing a more appropriate expression. The next picture is 1 day before this introduction, the day before Frodo's birthday, a day when we still hoped to push through and reach Canada. This is the shoe I'm wearing when I took that picture. This is what's on my feet. This type of shoe is what's on her feet, right? What do you call a through hiker's snow boot? 2 pairs of socks and running shoes. What do you call insulated through hiker's snow boot? He's got 2 pairs of socks and a plastic bed bag and a pair of shoes.
You do the same thing growing up in North Dakota.
I love it. I love it.
So what he's not telling you is he has every single shoe from when he went to school.
And I've written on it though, it says the mileage, where to wear. Mom and Dad, I'm very blessed. Mom and Dad are 98, 92 today. They'd be sitting out there enjoying. Dad might be making some comments, snarky. He's all there still. They have camped this many times.
And they hate it every time.
And they hated it every time, that's what they said. But at age 13, they took me to Boy Scouts. Boy Scout meetings. And I went on a week-long backpack in Sierra Nevada. It rained every dang day. They promised us the Pleiades and the shooting stars. It rained every day. I weighed barely 80 pounds, and I had a 35 to 40-pound backpack. We fought to a draw, but I fell in love with it out there. I was always the shortest kid in my class. For a boy, that was hard growing up. Out there, as long as I could keep up, I was the same as the big boys. And out there, all that stuff I would see in the Sunday night. Who remembers Sunday night Walt Disney Channel? Yeah. And we see Wildlife, Davy Boone, Davy Crockett, and Daniel Boone. And 5, 6 years old, we wore Spoon King caps. Out there, it was real. I might see a bear. I saw beavers that summer. The entire week, we saw just 2 other parties or 2. I fell in love with it out there. And it was a good thing. It was 10 years later when I met my wife. We were both working summer camp. She told me that she wouldn't have married me if I wasn't a backpack. It's true. So I'm lucky. Our son was 5 years later. We had our firstborn. Before he was 1 year old, we'd taken him backpacking 3 times. 2003, we through hiked the John Muir Trail, 211 miles, and we did it already thinking, we were really thinking hard about maybe doing the Pacific Crest Trail someday. And we did this to see if we'd come off that trip, still wanting to do it. Because if you ever done any big project, I mean, it's painful. If you've ever done any big project, you've done a long hike, you have to really want to do this. Because otherwise it's too much pain, right? And in 2007, I followed her for 2,650 miles. Yeah, I'm going to show the pictures. So, that's me. Every scrap of clothing I'm wearing is made out of cotton. Every scrap. And you notice around my belly is not a belly band. In our troop that year, it was 1965, Billy Quinn had a new Kelty, and it had a webbing thing across his belly. But what is that? Will that ever catch on? For our wedding summer, the big present we asked for was for our immediate families to go on a 10-day backpack with us. My parents did not, but her parents did, a number of sibs did. My brother said he'd start out a day later and catch us. He caught us on day 10, but look at his day. I got more than 50 pounds on my back. That's crazy. Here's one thing we have learned since then. When we take pictures, she stands on something that's higher, and I stand on something. We haven't learned that yet. Let's see. This is when we started the Pacific Crest Trail. You will never see that shirt that clean again. And here we are at the end. See the Santa Claus beard in the one corner? Frodo's hair is short. We'll cover that in a moment. This is Blazer in a new jacket. We finished. We finished the Canadian border, but not on the Pacific Crest Trail. As has been experienced for many years, fires are one thing another has battered people around. This year, people have gone up the parts past 30 miles of border, and they saw closed, absolutely not, do not go any further. Fire danger closed. And that was the PCT this year. Those of you who are squeamish may not look at the next photo. Awesome, Kevin? Yeah. What? No reaction? You've all been stunned. We had shaved our heads. I mean, halfway point on the Pacific Crest Trail. You had to do something. Oh, is it hard to see the flare? Oh, it's shining off her shiny head. Whose idea was it? No, it was mine, and somehow I thought it'd be a good idea to surprise her. I had a friend hiking equipment, and I turned to her and I said, Sam, I'm going to, we've hiked 1,325 miles.
So this is the halfway point.
Yeah, halfway point Pacific Crest Trail. Just like people, when they go across the equator on a boat, they have a Neptune ceremony. I thought we really should do something to mark this. So I had a best friend hike in 10 miles, portable shaving equipment. And I turned to Frodo and I said, "Dear, I'm going to shave my head, and I suggest that you do so too." Her response, I remember this verbatim, was she put her hands on her hips, looked me in the eye and said, "Absolutely not, no way." Those of you who've been in relationships, you probably know one thing. That's not necessarily the final answer. In fact, we have, I think, a newlywed couple here. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. If you say one word, it will be the final answer.
Yeah.
Right? So you just let her speak. They shave my head, put on a bandana, all this gray hair comes on down, looks like two old badgers got into a fight. And they both lost. And she's watching. And I'm thinking all this time, I know what's going through her head. When else will I ever do this? I'll be out here for 2 months more. It will go back. Right? And when I finish, she comes over and says, "You do it."
Which was a real mistake, because he had
No clue. So Larry had to do it. And this was the gift that kept on giving. Really, be going down the trail. You walk on the trail, you're not looking in the mirror, right? Maybe not for days. And I'd see this train look happening. I always walk behind, and I see her reach up to scratch her head. And she'd do that, and she'd realize that her head shaved, and
I turn around and I'd say, "I have no hair, and it's your fault."
and then mine grew back faster, so she had hair envy. Oh, lovely stuff. I'm 70, and our hike was 15 years ago. I can still tell you a story for each and every one of those 155 days we're out.
I can visualize every campsite.
We imprint differently out there. We remember differently. We're in an environment. If you were to think back a year ago now and think that week, try and come up with the story too while you're probably at work or whatever. Maybe I went to the beach. We imprint differently out there. We're in an environment where around any bend, something miraculous will happen. And it often does. So when Frodo went out there, she went out with one impression and came in a little different. And you need to talk up too.
Okay, sorry. So, I just decided to keep it. Anyway, when we started the hike, I thought it was going to be about scenery, which I knew was going to be gorgeous most of the time. I thought it was going to be about a physical challenge and a personal challenge. It was really about the people, about the community, the people that we met along the way. That's really what all the memories are about. It's interactions with other people.
So this is a day that I could, if we were facing a 2,000-foot climb, and you said, "Scout, tell me a story to make the climb disappear." For me and for you, I would carry us up that 2,000-foot climb. Cutthroat Pass.
So the picture he showed you that had Laser with her broken jacket, this is that day.
Yeah. This is the end of this little section right here. All right. One flake was how it began. That's how it always begins, doesn't it? Yeah. And one case of COVID. One flake was how it began. The first flurries started in the middle of the night, and they were as soft and harmless as photographs in a winter catalog. There was enough to catch in a tongue, and then enough to stick. Not enough yet for me to get out my camera. White splotches marked the ground. Evergreen boughs, frosted white. It was so beautiful, you could pinch yourself if you watched from inside a window. But as night wore on, snow began to build and pile up, and to grow increasingly heavy. Our nylon tents, pitched in a deserted gravel parking lot of Highway 20 at Rainy Pass, 60 miles from the Canadian border. Only 60 miles inboard. Yeah. Our tent started to sag. The first time I got out to knock snow off our tent was at 2 a.m. Laser didn't hear me as I brushed the snow off her tent as well. She'd been restless and groggy when she went to bed. Her tarp tent had a single pole located right next to her head. Aside from that, the structure relied on tent stakes and tension to stay upright. Under the ever-thickening winter blanket, the tension started losing as the snow began to win. Laser woke in the wee hours to find her tent collapsing. First, she felt it on her feet, curled them up, and then began to press on her knees. She didn't want to get out of her warm sleeping bag. And the tent had bowed so much that she felt it pressing against her side. She tried to knock the snow off from inside, but her efforts were futile. In the morning, Laser's sleeping bag was wet in places, not a good sign. And she ate breakfast inside our tent. Afterward, she dragged her gear to a nearby outhouse and tried to warm up as she packed. Frodo and I, the two of us, we were talking, looking at options and maps. We could hitch 35 miles east to Little Winthrop to dry out and let the storm blow through before returning. Laser listened to us with increasing impatience. Cut it out, she thought. Stop weighing pros and cons. It's snowing harder. Let's get going. We have to get over the pass before we can't see the trail. We started the 5-mile climb to Cutthroat Pass in 4 inches of snow. We were hunkered down, focused, even as the snow seeped into our running shoes. Then the 4 inches became 6. The 6 became 8, rising to drifts, climbing up over our calves. Visibility faded in and out as we walked through whiteouts. Laser was sobered by how fast the snow obscured the trail. Working hard to put her feet in our footsteps, she stifled the thought, we need to turn back. She'd been cold when she started, and even the exertion of the trail wasn't warming her up. Now she alternated between jamming her ungloved hand in her armpit and then down her pants. Near the top of the 2,000-foot climb, we reached a series of exposed, sharp switchbacks. Laser rounded one and exclaimed, Dalton! White crystals hung from his beard as he emerged from the fog. Of Laser's elation turned to puzzlement when she saw that he was with Chigger, Figaro, Guts, and Chuckwagon. What gives? Why are they walking toward us? That's when we realized 5 of them had turned back. I have hiked in snow. I have taught snow backpacking. I wanted to get on, so I started to talk it out. Chuckwagon told us, it's crazy up there and it's only getting worse. Listening to me, Laser oscillated between her strong impulse to proceed north and her guts directed to get out of the cold. And while I was puffing words into the fast-falling flakes, Frodo was staring at Laser's bare hand and at her flimsy broken jacket. In a moment's lull, Laser softly announced, her gut feeling began, is Scout and Frodo go on? I'm going too. That left the others quiet. Neither agreement nor dissent. As I began talking again, Laser pressed her numb fingers hard into her armpits. It took me 10 minutes to talk myself out, to agree that it was time to turn and head back down the trail. I lifted a foot and took a step. Something cracked inside, stopping me dead in my tracks. South. I cannot do south. For 5 months, I had followed the direction. For 5 months, I had followed the prime directive, hike north. Mom and Dad were going to meet me at Manning Park. I opened my mouth and started talking again. Frodo and I had a tacit agreement. If one of us felt strongly about the issue, we each had the right to exercise veto. This wasn't just for trail, but for all aspects of our lives. In 30 years, neither of us had ever taken that nuclear option step. But now, in the increasingly heavy snow, Frodo looked up and said, that's it. I'm exercising my veto. My next sentence hung waiting in my mouth. Then I turned, lifted a foot, and started downhill, walking south. That was hard. That was the first of 3 times we hit it out for Canada. First of 3 times. Let's talk about a pain. You ever heard about the 80-20 rule on the Appalachian Trail? 80% of the time it's just painful out there, and 20% it's as if you're walking through the land of Oz. Now that's not really true. I think it's a better percentage, but the spirit of it is true. We had a young man, I wasn't going to read the passage, but I'll just tell you the story in the book. We had a young man, we had just crossed the day before, 3 days before the Oregon-California border. This guy had jumped on to hike the entire state of Oregon. And he quickly, in a couple days, became one of us. And here it is 6 a.m., 3rd day, he's been on the trail. About 5:45, we're finishing packing up, and he's walking along, and he steps into our little campsite. and says, "Can I ask you a question?" He was young, we looked like parental types. And here was this question. He said, "Tell me, when does the pain stop?" And I'm ashamed to say that's exactly what we did. He asked this earnest question, and we laughed, because the truth is, it never does. It's the wonder, it's the amazingness of being out there that it does. And at Red Peak Pass in the state of Washington, right after lunch, I find I need to do my business out there. I've taken my little trowel, and Frodo and one other have hiked on. It is misty, maybe the cloud ceiling is 100 feet above me, and I'm squatting there, and I feel, just look past, and I feel this displacement of air, physically. And I look up, and there is a bald eagle. I literally reached up and slapped. That will stay with me. Another story about pain, this isn't quite as nice. GQ and Switch, two people who stayed with us before they started to hike. And they had hiked the Appalachian Trails the first couple weeks especially. People returned to them for asking advice. And someone said the same thing. Actually, Switch, the woman, the pair, she'd get this question printed out. She said, "Okay, tell me, when does the pain stop?" And she'd look at him and she'd say, "About 3 months." And she'd watch their eyes and let them do it. Say, "Well, I guess I can live with that." And then she'd finish it with, 3 months after you finish the hike. Yeah, I heard some people anticipating that. Right. Oh, so in addition to how we became hikers, there's one of the reasons why thousands of people know us. Has anyone else had 7,000 people sleep at their house? Not all at once, but over time. We Trail Angel here in San Diego. The trail is 60 miles out to the east. There is public transportation. It takes half a day to get there. When it drops you off, there's no signs.
Doesn't run on weekends.
Doesn't run on weekends. We've had people call us, "Scout Frodo, I'm here at the bus station," and the bus, it doesn't run. And when you get out there, your choices used to be, it's a little bit nicer now. I could sleep next to the youth detention center, or I could sleep next to the very active border patrol station in Rouse in the night. Not good choices. So we opened up our house the year before we started hiking, 2006. We thought this would be a great way to touch the trail. We'll get to know some hikers who are coming in from far away. We'll drive out in the morning. They'll stay with us a day or two. We'll feed them, give them a place to stage, and we'll follow their stories. It'll build up our own desire. And we hosted 17 people total that year. And we thought we were hot. Because what do all these people have in common? Hope. They all are starting the Pacific Crest Trail that morning. And they all slept at our house the night before. Had dinner, this is their after dinner talk. Look at the faces, will you? All shapes and sizes, all ages, all breadth. I really love that. And people have asked me at their house, "Scout, can you tell who's going to finish and who's not?" And the answer is absolutely not. Because the most important muscle out there really is this one. And this is where my wife, PhD scientist, says, "It's not a muscle." But I still like saying it. Maybe someday she can.
And it's true. There are people who come and they've done the Appalachian Trail and think, "Oh, they know what they're doing, they're going to be fine." And then they get to Lake Lorena and they just can't handle the desert, can't handle the lack of water, and they'll call us up and say, "I'm full of water." And then you get other people who've never backpacked before, they've maybe never set up their tent before, and you're worried about them, but sometimes they're the ones who get it done because they really, really want it.
Zelzin from Mexico came to our house in 2017. This woman doesn't speak a word English. Her gear is inappropriate. Has never backpacked, never camped the night before in her life. She stayed with us for 3 days. And in the nicest way, we made her a project. We wanted her, when she left her house, we dropped her off, that she'd at least have a chance. I met her this last weekend at a hiker conference in Colorado. That's where I gave my first in-person talk. Zelzin is now the first woman in Mexico who has completed the Triple Crown. Yeah. Zelzin has mapped out and is planning to bring to fruition Mexico's first long-distance trail. No traditional trails in Mexico. Really cool. This is what we get to do. Hang on here. So what's it like to be in our house? During that time, ABC, local ABC came out, even on a number of the news stations. They did a 2-minute piece. Let me see how I think this one I turned the volume a little bit. And this reporter and his cameraman walked their house.
When I will do when I next the bar, when I meet chili.
For Barney and Sandra Mann, cooking dinner for their large family is nothing new.
We'll see you in a minute.
This evening is no exception.
Oh, from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But this family dynamic is a little different.
We talk to each other differently up there, and I love that. We treat each other differently.
Gathered around the living room, these aren't relatives, but rather a family of hikers about to take on the Pacific Crest Trail.
More hikers?
Their first stop is Barney and Sandra's.
We're famous in this little tiny community. If you talk to someone who's done the PCT in the last 5 years and ask them if they know who Scout and Frodo are, they'll say yes, even if they didn't stay with us.
Scout and Frodo are Barney and Sandra's trail names.
You're on the trail and you do something usually stupid, and someone says, "Oh, that should be your trail name."
For 15 years, they've been the starting point for the 2,650-mile, 5 to 6 month trek from San Diego to Canada.
I mean, it's really cool that your experience can start before the trail actually starts and to send you off in such a positive manner.
That's where dinner comes in, along with some advice from Scout and Frodo.
One of the things I found that the trail has often taught me time and time again is not to judge.
Please always be courteous and gracious. If people offer you help, be grateful for it and let them know that.
And as they bid farewell to this group of hikers,
We've taken out over 1,200 people. Yeah, everyone has stayed at our house.
There we go.
their own journey is about to end.
I feel like it's sad to see it end in one aspect, but it's also amazing that we've had 15 like really quality years with so many hikers.
Frodo and Scout will hang up their hiking poles and stop hosting next spring. It's the end of the trail for these trail angels.
One more year left. Yeah, we'll do it for 1 more year. It's been 15 years. We will be gloriously sad and also a bit happy too.
So that was 2019. Our last year was supposed to be 2020. Then there was the pandemic. So it wasn't our last year, he said it was our last year. So then we're going to do it in 2021, and we couldn't do it then either. As Delta. But then we actually did host this last spring, and we're not sure whether we're done hosting or not.
I have one final excerpt to read, and I'll sit over inside. We'll do some Q&A, and I'll sit over and sign some books and sell some books. Great. This last one. Last one I like it all, but this one in particular right there. OJ was a young woman journalist on the trail, and she's finishing September 24th. She finished before the snow that year, September 24th, 2007. As OJ descended the final miles to the dense forest in the Northern Monument, she wasn't sure what to expect. The closer she got, the more she started hurrying. Then she saw the line of missing trees. It's as though someone waxed a 30-foot wide strip of the forest as far as the eye could see. OJ veritably skipped down the last switchbacks, and then she heard familiar voices. Her mom and her dad were there, having hiked in the last 8 miles to meet her, just as they'd planned. And there was the monument. There was Canada. Her parents asked, "What do you feel?" OJ answered, "Relief, excitement, disbelief." But what she actually felt was surprise. She had started the hike with hundreds of other people, including super athlete types and Appalachian Trail veterans. She thought so many of them had been better prepared than she was, with better gear, better physiques, better brains, better senses of humor. Now at the border, she thought, I am an occasional jogger, an excessively poor organizer, and a perfectly ordinary person. Who would have imagined that I would make it? How crazy is that? That I could walk from Mexico to Canada. It blows my mind. We are all capable of extraordinary things, whether you know it or not. I saw a big number. I forget whether it was 500,000 or something. that this program raises for the big Westings? Is someone said, well, we'll get some people together to raise money, and they'll go out hiking and they'll raise $500,000. You go, okay, but here it is. You guys made that possible in so many ways. I had a piece published. I was the lead ed piece in the Baltimore Sun. And what was it about? It wasn't about my doing the Triple Crown. It was about a 1/3 of a mile walk. I did every day with a guy about this high, our grandson. Started with the pandemic. We supposed we were going to have 1,200 people signed up to stay with us, hundreds of packages in our garage, and of course we had to cancel. 4 days later, we were flying back to DC on a Southwest jet with 6 people the day the governor closed state of California, because our middle child, our daughter, is 8 months pregnant with our second grandchild. She said, you either come now or you're not going to be able to. So we did for 3 months. I lived again with a 1 month with a pregnant woman again. I never thought I'd do that. And for 2 months, I got to hold this newborn, Howard did, and be there with our 2-year-old grandson. Every day, 11 o'clock, we'd go out, and he was reluctant at first. It's a long walk, 20 houses down and back, shuttered doors, started COVID. Remember those days? But here's obviously a grandpa and his grandson walking. At the end of 3 months, we had this whole community. There's a woman's garden known. Every day we'd move a couple of them, and then she moved in the mornings. There was Steve, who we watched these peonies grow, and the next thing I know, said something to him. And there's a bouquet on our front doorstep. We watched the arugula grow, we planted, grow, and then in 3 months it also wilted, grew out. And every day we'd sit down and he'd say, Zeta, it's a Jewish grandpa, he'd say, Zeta, talk arugula. Talk arugula. Yeah. And Elliot, who was even older than I am, had one day he came out and said, hey, you guys, we got the swing out front hanging 20 feet down from the oak tree. You got to use it. And we did one day, and I think he saw it. And he hadn't used it a long time. It was broken. The next day, Elliot is 20 feet up in this tree on a ladder. He's brought a new swing. We had, just by that act, we performed this thing. Yeah. So I hope whatever you do, that you go out, maybe feel a little bit more inclined to go out when this is all over. And I'll open up to a Q&A when I finish. I got books over here. Some of you brought your books. You already have. Happy to sign them. With the books, you got freebies, PCT decals, and maps, and a bookmark. And one other thing, for those of you, I'll ask an author a favor. In this modern world, ratings on Amazon and Goodreads make a difference. It's the way it is. And I really appreciate you. It's like giving me a hug. So any Q&A, any questions? Unless I send you one. Oh, 2 questions. There we go. Yes.
Oh, she can go first. Okay. My name's Heather. I would like to know, because you guys were talking about you like imprint differently around here.
Talking about?
You said you imprint differently, right?
Yes.
When you're out there. So what is your most favorite, and I know you were talking about like campsites too, like, so I just want to know, like, what was the most epic moment that you go, yeah, it was totally worth it. It's the shittiest, literal shittiest moment. Like, what?
Not the eagle.
Why am I bathroom disaster. No, I'm just kidding, but.
So my shittiest moment?
I mean, we all.
No, I'm not going to tear up a bit. We have just crossed the Oregon-California border. And she stepped off to go to the bathroom. And I'm 20 minutes in front of her, and I'm sitting inside trail journaling. And I see her just walk up. And her shirt is dirty, but it's every which way wrong dirty.
It's what?
Every which way wrong dirty. The shirt she's wearing. She's walking toward me.
Oh my gosh.
What?
No, I'm excited.
Oh, you're excited?
It just doesn't right away.
And she opens her mouth, and I can see one tooth is hanging, and the other tooth is half gone. And this is often a passage I read at a book reading like this. The next 12 hours, a series of small miracles. We're 20 miles away from the nearest roadhead. Ashland, it's a Sunday, the dentist on call, the merchant doesn't come in. They told us that. Welcome to Ashland. It's like, welcome to a small, tiny third world country. 10 o'clock at night, this happened to 10 o'clock at night, we're walking out of the dentist's office. Her teeth had been fully repaired. We spent 2 hours on them. I was his assistant. 2 days later, she hikes 24 miles. And if you see her smile right now, it's the same work we did that time. You're gonna answer one more?
That was my shittiest day too.
Well,
But here's the story. Were you shitting when you fell?
No. No, I looked at it. There was like this rock sticking up about that much. And then, 4.5 feet later, there was another rock sticking up that much, and I felt like a tree. And I went to let it scratch on me. I just knocked myself. And that's so soft. Oh, it's just so bizarre.
and
That is someone who got shit on the shirt, isn't it?
No.
yeah,
No,
I was with you on that one.
you want to
But
answer
that's
that?
good.
It's really hard to find the best.
So let me tell you something.
Because there's so many.
Yeah.
This is a true confession. I don't really want to do that. If you have friends who go on any kind of really epic journey, that's what it is. This is a modern Hajj, if you will. Most of the people who start the trail, 95% do it as singletons. They go out there by themselves. They make families, but they go home by themselves. And what happens? They're home with their friends, and their friends give them 5 minutes. And then they want to start a normal conversation, which I thoroughly understand. But on the receiving end, what you have misspelled, I have the Hope Diamond, 57 facets. I pulled it out, you asked me to pull it out, tape up 56 of them, and just show one to you. And just be a tiny bit aware when you approach someone who's just had something cosmic happen. And not just long hike, but other things. Also allow them space.
Yeah, be patient.
Yeah, be patient, yeah. I would interview these singletons. I interviewed over 70 people for the book, multiple times. And especially, almost all of them were singletons. They were so thirsty to talk and tell their trail stories. Well, thank you, Scout, for asking. What?
Can you think of a very best time?
I can think of so many best times, it's pitiful. So many best times. Yeah. Question?
I'm reading the book On Trails by Robert Moore, and in the part where he's talking about how as humans we're losing our ability to imprint our brains because we're not out on trails. We're even relying on GPS. We're not even using maps. We don't know how to navigate. And I just wonder, when you're in a snowdrift like that, I mean, in the passage you talked about losing the trail, but is it really at that point instinct that you're going by when you can't see the trail?
So actually just the opposite. What we were relying on that circumstance?
We didn't have GPS.
Yeah.
No.
Well, even if we have, what we're relying is we're pulling every last shred of relevant experience and applying it there. So at the very end, we formed Team Snowplow. We can push back that first time from Cutthroat Pass. We go in this little town, and 10 of us agree we will hike as one, which is really unusual, because you've been making all independent decisions the whole way, 2,600 miles. We will hike as one. Literally, we'll have a lead person and a tail and Charlie. We'll always be in sight of each other. We'll do an old-fashioned buddy system, because you tend not to eat, you tend to hide pain, and we'll each look out for each other. We'll make sure that one's eating and peeing, which also means if we gotta do number 2, we're all finding something interesting in this direction, while you have gone that direction. We took a poll. We examined what gear do we have, who is the best gear, who is the bomber tent, and paired up. Who is the best skills? Who has the best navigation skills? 2007. We did have one guy with a GPS, but didn't really know how to use it. We walked in there with 3 different sets of maps. We had a waterproof map case. Disco Dan, who was a retired Navy captain, was always in the lead. He was our best navigator. Frodo with the maps was second, and we would trade off. And what physically happened out there, every time you get to a pass, a saddle, and you can go then on either side of the saddle, and you couldn't tell. Because the map, you come to an arrow point, you couldn't tell us going this way or that way. And literally, we send someone out a number of times that last day before we turned around 30 miles from Canada.
So even in the snow, if you're walking, a lot of times you're traversing across the hillside, you can see where the trail
A little
must
like
be
this.
by the curve.
But many places that day, so we send guys out and you look for a cut, a man-made cut. Look for other signs, this is the way to go. What happens today? So I walked, we used to get people would ship entire map sets for Pacific Crest Trail to our house and then mail them up the trail. They carry 100 miles worth. We get hundreds of them. That disappeared about 4 or 5 years ago. Everyone does the app, whether you use Gaia, whether you use All Trails. There's a specific long distance trail app now it's called Far Out. It used to be called Gutho, very good. And I did the Continental Divide Trail, goes along the Rocky Mountains all the way next to Canada, in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. So 200 miles between trailheads, largely roadless, and I came upon a sign that said, 2 days in, at a junction, I have lost my cell phone. And I'm at, it's abandoned cabin here. No, I had, this woman had lost her cell phone. And she did the best thing. I know someone will be along and I need to sit and wait. She got really lucky. Next person along was a CDT hiker and he had found her cell phone. Yeah, yeah.
But she still had to wait a
On the Continental Divide Trail, one thing that's really neat about it, this is the 21st century. And we're in an era with this and with maps. I carried 2 sets of maps and I carried a working GPS that had a track on it. You still had to get zen about getting lost every day. When you come to Meadow normally, in this trail you see 1, 2, maybe 3 trails going through it often. On the CDT, there's so little traffic, I would come to Meadow and go, okay, oh shit. Because there wasn't, maybe a couple hundred people, if that, are passing there. And so they're not tamping down the grass, not enough. And you go to the natural spot across this quarter-mile, half-mile meadow, and there'll be a used trail. You walk along it for 200 yards and peter out. Because everyone else will do the same thing. And you just hunt one way or the other way to find the actual trail where it picks up. But it's neat that there's still a place in the U.S. to do that. State of New Mexico, I hiked 2 days, 50 miles, and I couldn't see another human being. And I dropped dead gorgeous country. I mean, you guys get to go out, and even in our local mountains, you see places that just a fraction of people get to see. Isn't that amazing? Any more questions? Oh, yes, sir.
What was your go-to meal when you were out there? Because they're going to have to carry 3 days worth of food, so I'm trying to give them some inspiration.
So there were hikers who mashed potatoes again. What flavor?
Kim's favorite is mashed potatoes.
I don't mash potatoes. Okay, butter, garlic, or who did a top ramen every night?
Or mac and cheese.
Or mac and cheese most every night. Personally, at the end of the day, I like something that will pick me up. There are people going cold. I like warm. We have maybe 1/5 of our meals we home dehydrated. We made something neat at home. Chicken, you don't cut it up into small squares to hydrate. You shred it small squares. No matter how long you boil it, still stay a hard small square. But shredded will do. Probably my best on the AT, which is the last on the Appalachian Trail, was the Lipton or Knorr noodle dinners. They make a lot of different flavors.
Is that the one K-N-O-R?
Yeah, however it's pronounced. But look on the label. It has to say 7 minutes or less cooking time. We had someone recently who did it. It was a 20-minute cooking time. And we ran into them on the trail. They'd run out of the gas. Because they're trying to cook the thing for 20 minutes. Dude, it's one good way to keep up your desire is happy food. So the Knorr's good.
Hot chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
Hot chocolate.
Yeah, we'll be there in November, so the hot chocolate is going to be great.
Yeah, go to bed with hot chocolate. Any more questions? Great. I'm going to sit over for a little bit and sign books. Over there.